What's going on, Internet? IG back again today with a different kind of video. We're looking at the top 8 tips that I have for online privacy in 2018. So there's 2 guiding questions that come to mind when I'm thinking about privacy, and that is, what information do I want people on the internet to know about me, and what information do I want companies and their advertisers to know about me? So those are kind of the guiding questions around this tips video today. Sponsored by Secure Swiss Data. So stick around to the end of the video to find out about our sponsors for today, but a special thank you to Secure Swiss Data for sponsoring today's video. Let's get to the top 8 privacy tips for 2018. So number 1, this is kind of like almost a throwaway tip in some senses, and it's going to depend on what kind of platform you use. But the number 1 tip is to keep your software up to date. Now, I realize that we start to blur a bit of a line here between what is security and what is privacy. I'm mostly going to be talking about privacy today, but sometimes the security side of things can bleed over into privacy. So keeping your software up to date is very, very important. That means making sure that all of your apps on your devices are up to date, making sure that the software that you run on your computer is up to date. Obviously, if you're using a Mac, then try to limit your app installations to what is in the App Store. If you're on Windows, the same applies. Also, if you're on Windows, you can use a package management system called Chocolatey. I'll leave a link in the description, that operates very much in the same way that a Linux package manager would. In other words, it goes out to check to see if there's up-to-date versions of software that you may have installed, and then it will seek to download those updates and install them for you very much in the background without you having to babysit every single step of it. So Chocolatey is highly recommended. I'll leave a link in the description. And then obviously if you're on Linux, then it's very, very easy because we have repositories and package managers that do all that for us. So that's tip number 1, keeping your software up to date. It's pretty straightforward. Let's move on. Tip number 2 is use a VPN. This is something that it kind of went from, yeah, it's sort of recommended, to now it's almost highly recommended that you use a VPN, especially in a public Wi-Fi situation. When you're connecting to basic public infrastructure, using a VPN can be really, really handy, as it there's different ways of explaining it, but essentially it encrypts the traffic between your device and whatever site you're wanting to connect to, and funnels it through servers that help mask your location, your footprint on the internet. Now, it's not infallible, so if you're wanting to use it to do shady and illegal things, it's still not going to, it's not 100% foolproof method, but using a VPN to help protect your own privacy and your own online footprint is a very, very important step. So I guess 2 recommendations. They're not sponsors or anything. These are just the only ones I've had experience with. NordVPN, the reason I recommend them is because it very much depends on the location of the VPN company as to what laws they have to comply with. So NordVPN, being in Panama, I think, they have a very specific set of laws there that prevent other governments from jumping into the VPN logs of their customers. So that's a good thing. The other one that I probably recommend is TunnelBear. TunnelBear is a very, very popular VPN service now. It takes the security and privacy of its users very seriously. They have a 500 meg, I think, free sort of option that you can use. And NordVPN is obviously a paid service as well. So getting a VPN service is highly recommended. Okay, so tip number 3 is change the web browser that you're using. So again, this boils back to fundamentally how different companies interpret your usage data. So a browser like Google Chrome, for example, even though they are relatively upfront with what data they collect, it is better, in my opinion, just to have a browser that doesn't do this stuff by default. So a very popular option that does take the privacy of its users quite seriously would be Firefox. They do have tracking disablers that can work across the browser, whether you're browsing privately or not. And more importantly, they've still got that framework there to be able to add extensions on later on. For example, tip number 4, using a tracking disable extension like disconnect.me. Again, link in the description for everything that I'm talking about. Disconnect.me is a really fantastic service that basically erases or disconnects any possible tracking between websites or between ad networks as you move your way around the internet. So it's a really great privacy tip to use something like disconnect.me. They have a browser extension that you can use for free, and then if you want to bundle that in with their own VPN service and some other bits and pieces, then you pay a monthly subscription fee like most of these companies would. But yeah, so that's tip number 4. Use a tracking disabler browsing extension. Tip number 5. Now that we've talked about web browser and web extensions, let's talk about search engine. The search engine, I feel like, is the home hub of the internet in 2018. It's depending on what search engine you use, that's probably going to be where most of your data is in terms of what you as a person, what your internet usage is. So in that regard, probably selecting a privacy-aware search engine is probably going to be among your top priorities here. And the one that comes out by and large in most of the research that I've done is DuckDuck Go. DuckDuck Go is actually been around for quite a while now, but it just in these last few years where online privacy has ramped up significantly, DuckDuck Go has really made a name of itself by championing the cause of a private search engine, or one that doesn't track your search habits across the internet. So setting your default search browser search engine is really, really simple on most browsers. So give DuckDuckGo a go. Okay, so number 6. This is where we start to get pretty complicated, and that is, let's tune up how much stuff your social networks know about you. The big ones that come to mind would obviously be Facebook, Twitter, and like Google+, I guess. And all of those do have relatively robust privacy tools that you can jump into. Again, I come back to those 2 guiding questions. What do you want other people to know about you? And what do you want the companies and their advertisers to know about you? And with that in mind, you should be able to jump into Facebook especially and start taking out all of the stuff in your profile that maybe you don't want others knowing about you, or maybe that you don't really want Facebook or its advertisers knowing about you. Now, I will say that I could go into an awful lot of detail with Facebook especially of how best to do this, but I've left that to people that have already done a better job than I could ever do. So I've linked an article from Wired that you can jump into and read and watch the video on in the description below. And there's also another article there showing you step by step some of the recommendations that they have when it comes to tightening up the privacy of your Facebook account. But the fundamentals here break down to how much of your profile is public, what's your default behavior on all of your posts, whether they are just for your friends or whether they're for public consumption, and then also how ads link in with your Facebook timeline. So all of those things are stuff that you can tweak to some degree. So taking the time to actually do that, it is going to be a significant investment, probably 30 minutes to an hour to get it done the way that you want it to, but it's probably worth it in the long run. And retrospectively, disabling all of the other posts that you've made on Facebook and setting them to a different privacy level is a great step in helping tighten up your online footprint. Okay, now if you want to jump into, what are we up to? Tip number 7, that is jump into your Google activity. So there's two places I want you guys to look up, and I'll put the links in the description. myactivity.google.com. That is a comprehensive list of every activity that is linked to your Google account. You can go through there, remove interests, and tighten that up if you want to. Also, the other one is privacy.google.com. And this is a comprehensive web page dedicated to what Google is doing and the measures that it has in place to protect your privacy online. Now again, they do have their own tips there that are relevant to their own Google services, but I definitely recommend jumping into that and seeing what they have to offer, because you'll be surprised at just how much Google is tracking about you. But on the same, I guess on the flip side, they're also very upfront about just how much they're tracking about you. And they do give you some control over turning those things on or off. So myactivity.google.com and privacy.google.com. Finally, tip number 8, I can't count, tip number 8, use a secure messaging app. And again, I guess this comes down to what mode of communication you use primarily every single day. For me, I guess I use a lot of SMS and I use a lot of Facebook Messenger, and I realize that neither of those things are particularly private or secure in terms of other companies being able to read what's in those conversations, whether it's your telco, your telephone service provider, or whether it's Facebook. So some other ones that come to the top of the list when it comes to privacy aware messaging services, you've got things like WhatsApp, Viber, Signal, and Telegram. All of those have end-to-end encryption in their messages, but they all have varying degrees of that encryption. Some have been under a bit of hot water lately because they're getting pressure from interesting governments wanting to get into their users' data, and the company is saying, no, we won't. But that particular government is pressuring them anyway. I won't give details, but essentially what you need to know is that even though WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, the conversations are end-to-end encrypted, as is the case with Signal and Telegram and Viber as well. So using one of those secure messaging apps is, I think, one more step that you can take. And again, it's going to largely depend on who your friends are with. So now that I've covered my top 8 tips, it's time to talk about today's sponsor, which is Secure Swiss Data. Secure Swiss Data is a company that is well aware of all of the privacy issues that plague the average internet user in 2018, and they are starting a crowdfunding campaign to create an end-to-end encrypted all-in-one communication system that is independent from any government or corporate influences. Their top priority will be to protect users' privacy from government and corporate surveillance. They will also be completely ads-free. They're going to be easy to use, very similar to Google, and be an all-in-one system that includes encrypted email, which is going to be free for all users, and also calendar, file storage, notes, tasks, messenger, and file sharing. All of which in an effort to save time and money, because there'll be no need to learn how to use different systems or different interfaces, or agree to multiple different terms and conditions that you do for other cloud services. And you will also be one of the first in the world to use an all-in-one communication system that will integrate blockchain technology for an additional level of security. So check them out, links in the description, and a special thank you to Secure Swiss Data for sponsoring this video. Well guys, that's it from me today. If this video was helpful to you, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you like this kind of content on a regular basis, and I'll catch you all in the very next video. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.